Okay, so as Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey is the basis of much of Western literature, the Greek, or what your book is calling Athenian drama, will be the basis for Western drama. This is especially due to the medieval humanist movement, which looks back at the Greek and the Romans, which then has a great influence on the cultural atmosphere of 15th and 16th century England, and therefore on Shakespeare. Now, while your book says that modern theater goers can easily appreciate the plays that are written in ancient Greece, we have to keep in mind that going to the theater in Greece would not be like going to a play today, say on Broadway. It's a lot more like taking Broadway and putting it in the middle of Mardi Gras on the night of the Tony Awards. The plays take place during these festivals in honor of Dionysus, who's the god of wine, also a god who's an outsider, comes from elsewhere, and is considered a subversive god, one who upsets the status quo. So you have a mixture in these festivals of religion, politics, music, poetry, drama, slapstick, all of this coming together in like this hodgepodge for the festival. And there are competitions. People are competing during these festivals for best actor, for the best play, things like that. All right, so Greek theater, of which Athens is the center, originates in the 5th century BCE and may have come from the shamanistic practices of the Near East, where the Greeks have colonized. They've gone out to the Near East and may have brought it back from there. It's believed to be originally based on rituals, which is true of English theater as well. And with all the performers being in a chorus. You don't have actors at first. You just have everybody in this chorus. Now, your book says that Thespis was the first to write tragedy and may have been the first actor. However, there's some controversy regarding this, with some academics saying that he may have been the 16th in line. Now, while there is this controversy as to Thespis' role as the first actor, it is agreed that he is the first winner of a competition for tragedy during the festivals, and that he introduced plays to the competitions of these festivals. So prior to this, the closest art form we would have had would have been the poetry contests, doing the long epic poems like we saw with the Iliad and the Odyssey. Thespis is also credited, and this is his most important role, credited for stepping out of the chorus and creating the role for a single actor on stage who can then partake in dialogue with the chorus. All right, so this is incredibly important as to the development of theater. Now, Sophocles takes this one step further by expanding it to 2 actors, so now the 2 actors can interact with one another and with the chorus, and then Euripides will take it to 3 actors, and this foreshadows the acting cast that we have today and gives us a better sense of modern theater. Now, back to the origins of tragedy. Aristotle believes that the word tragedy comes from a phrase that meant goat song, which comes from another concept of offering a goat as sacrifice to the gods or as an award for some competition won. Right, so that's where we may get the word tragedy. Now, your book does not talk about this, but I think it's important that you also know that Aristotle defines the tragic hero, and his definition of a tragic hero is a person of high moral and social standing who, usually because of a flaw in his personality, but sometimes because of poor judgment, falls a great distance, falls off this perch of high social standing, and suffers insurmountable consequences. Now, this definition of the tragic hero will stand until Arthur Miller questions it in the 1950s, specifically with his Death of a Salesman. He says the tragic hero doesn't have to have this high social standing. It can be an ordinary person. Now, please note that I keep using the male personal pronoun throughout this lecture. This is because women are not allowed to act. Now, this is true in ancient Greece, it's true in Shakespeare's time, and it's true in Japanese No and Kabuki theater. All the female roles in all 3 of these areas are being played by men, right? It's also important to note that women at first are not even allowed in the audiences of these plays. Actually, I think somewhere in the 4th century BCE they are there, but at first no women are allowed even in the audience. Now, to the actual structure of the Greek theater, it of course has to be outdoors. You have no electricity, so that means that you have to use the sun for lighting. And it's also in what's called the round. And what this means is that the stage is surrounded on three sides by the audience, who then sit on these wooden benches in that go higher and higher up the slope of a valley. Now, you can think of the Meadowbrook Amphitheater or even Pine Knob being similar to that. They aren't quite in the round, but they're similar. Now, the orchestra of this theater is at the lowest area of the arena or the valley, and it contains a flat wooden platform under which is a wooden building known as a skene. Right, and it's in that wooden building that you do the interior scenes if you're going to have interior scenes in the play. Now, there's two main devices used in Greek theater. The second one I think is very important. The first one I cannot pronounce properly, but it's the ekoukalma, which is a trolley device that can be rolled out from the side stages and used to represent the interior of a building. And then the makan, which is a pulley that is used to lower and raise actors to and from the stage. Right, so they're actually being lowered down on the stage or raised off the stage. Now, many times these actors are representing gods, and so we get the phrase deus ex machina, God from the machine. This is important to writers nowadays because these gods would just be lowered down and rescued the hero who was in some dire straits. For modern writers, that's a really bad device to use. You're kind of laughed at if you use the deus ex machina. Back in ancient Greek days, it would have been perfectly acceptable. Now, as to the play itself, it consists of a chorus, which, as your book says, was originally composed of 12 people, then expanded to 15. One of these chorus members is the leader who has all the lines. The rest of the chorus just mimic whatever else is being said. Earlier, as I said, originally there would have been one actor when Thespis created that. This eventually became 3, which allows for a greater diversity of action and dialogue. In all cases, the actors would have worn masks, so this is different from plays. We see it in no theater in Japan also, however. But in Japan, the mask has to represent a single emotion. Here, the actors are just wearing the mask, and so they have to get everything across through their voice. You have no facial expressions. The plays were composed in verse, but not in the complex hexameter of Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, but in iambic verse, which is a short syllable followed by a long syllable. And when we get to Shakespeare, well, we won't, but if you study Shakespeare, he works in iambic pentameter. So it's 5 of these iambs, 5 feet, right? They're just using the short syllable followed by the long. Now, the chorus will be given much more complex verse forms, however, and their parts are also accompanied by dance. So in these Greek plays, you'll get the dialogue of the actors, but with the chorus, you get dance, you get singing, you get more complex verse. So again, not exactly like the plays of today. All right, so hopefully that gives you a background on Greek theater. Will help you imagine the plays a little bit more in your mind's eye when you read Oedipus and Medea.